Sylvia. Thank you so much for joining SheLeads today and being a guest on the show. I am so honored and excited to get to hear your story and just learn from you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Of course. So Sylvia, right now you are the CEO of Girl Scouts, but before even working at Girl Scouts and being the CEO, you have such an incredible career, even starting at Stanford. So you are, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the first one in your heritage to graduate from Stanford with an engineering degree, male or female. And then, is that...
the first one, one of the first to get with my graduate engineering degree from Stanford.
Amazing. And then coming out of Stanford, you were a rocket scientist at NASA in the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And then you continue to kind of go into this business route and being tech executives at these top companies, including IBM, Dell, Apple. And then, so clearly you have this, and I'm wondering if it's innate, but clearly you have this ability to just break these barriers and become such a powerful leader in everything you do. And I'm wondering, so first, where did this start? How did this all begin? Your love for Girl Scouts and just in general?
So, I actually know the answer to that, and that's because of Stanford. Okay. Because in the mid-2000s, somebody called me. Let me turn my... somebody called me from Stanford and said that they're doing this research. And they said, you're one of the first male or female Hispanics to get your graduate engineering degree. And they said, why is that? Because Stanford at the time wasn't really recruiting in southern New Mexico. And I didn't know the answer. So the more the interviewer, good Stanford investigator, kept asking me questions, the more I realized that everything changed when I was a Girl Scout, because my Girl Scout troop leader helped me realize, there were stars and planets, because I was looking at the beautiful New Mexico sky at night when I was on a camping trip. And she remembered that. So later I earned my science badge with space, making an Estes rocket. And that trial and error in that all-girl environment, because if you think about in class, if you try to do Estes rockets, the boys would say after you've failed 2 or 3 times, you're not good at it, quit, right? Yeah. That's not for you. Yeah. But in Girl Scouts, you're continually, until you succeed. And I did it finally, and it went up into the sky, and I'm like, I can do this. So that gave me the confidence that I could do science and math. And so as a kid, when you feel confident about something and you're interested, then you become competent. And I did that. And obviously I kept doing math and science till I got so confident I was a rocket scientist. But that was only one part of the story. The other part was getting to your point about persistence and resilience. Was I grew up in my family, we were a Spanish-speaking household. And my family, we were paycheck to paycheck. And so Girl Scouts, if I sold cookies, that could help pay for my membership dues and other program fees. And I realized I was going to have to sell an inordinate number of boxes, at least for me. It seemed like an inordinate number. And my troop, and, setting a goal and then breaking it down into smaller achievable steps. And when she taught me that was like, like I could have my dreams come true. Like, wow, this is how you do it. But then she also said, you never leave the side of a sale until you hear no 3 times. And that was important because in a Spanish-speaking household, you're sort of taught to wait till the adults speak to you. And so you can't sell cookies if you have to wait for that. So, and then how do you overcome that? So then it was a really great lesson that I started learning at 7 years old. So think about it. It's this muscle I'm developing at 7 years old. How do I get to a yes? And so from 7 years old on, I'm always trying to figure out, how do I get to a yes? And so that's what enabled me to be kind of a trailblazer, was I was always trying to figure out, how do I get to a yes?
Wow. And so then clearly, as you said, like people weren't recruiting from your area to go to Stanford. And so how was Stanford even introduced? Like, how was that an option? How did you know that was a possibility?
That's a great question too. It turns out I had a very advanced 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Baldwin. Okay. And what Mrs. Baldwin did was one day, I don't know why, but in this small, dusty agricultural town, she started showing us pictures of universities. And remember, the desert Southwest, where I grew up in Las Cruces, the it's the Chihuahua Desert. The only desert more arid is the Sahara, and then you're in tundra. Okay, so it is brown and dry. When I saw the beautiful red tile roofs, the green foothills, the grass oval, I just blurted out, "I want to go there." And she came to my desk and looked at me and she said, "That's one of the best schools in the world." And then she said, "You're a smart girl. You can go there." So at 9 years old, I said I was going to Stanford.
Wow.
And so that's how it happened.
Incredible. And from there, you almost set these small goals to get to that big point.
You're absolutely right, because when I said I wanted to go there and then I discovered what it took, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to get really good grades to go to Stanford.
Yeah. So I'm sure you had people telling you no along the way. And you said, like, you built this mental model saying, I'm gonna try 3 times until I get a yes. But how is that? Like, is that something you just practice and like build to become better at, or how did you deal with these no's?
So really great question. When I think about, I wanted to I played percussion, I played the drums and xylophone, all those things, timbales, and I was first chair. And so in high school, our band got big timbales, marching timbales. And the first chair normally in a band gets to choose their marching instrument. So I said to my band director, I want to play timbales. And he said, no. And I said, why not? And he said, because you're a girl. And I'm like, well, that's not going to change. Why else? And he just hemmed and hawed. And finally he said, you're not strong enough. So that summer, I worked out in the only way I could, which is, pre-internet, where you could download fitness or whatever. My family didn't have money for a gym. So I put myself on a regimen. I would ride my bike to a really far school. And at that school, I picked up rocks and stones. And then in the hot New Mexico sun, I would just walk up and down the football field. And it's interesting. I wrote a book called Path to the Stars for middle school kids. And when I was writing about that, I asked my older brother, I'm like, that's what I remember. And he goes, oh my God. He goes, you were such a dork. It was like so embarrassing. But when school started, I strapped on those timbales and I marched up and down the field. And I remember my teacher, my band director, saying, oh, people are going to be so mad at me because they're going to think I made the girl carry the heavy drums. They're not going to think you wanted to play them. But I did. And I was very grateful that I did.
Wow. And so what lessons can you teach other girls who, because it's not natural. I think it's very natural for anyone to be, if they receive a no, then it almost like eats at them internally. And they're like, okay, I guess it's a no. So how do you almost teach that confidence to keep going at it and asking the why?
Yeah. So I think that's what was so important, that my troop leader told me the 3 no's, because in my life, that sort of became the standard, right? Okay. Don't push to be obnoxious, right? But push like, wait, you told me no, but why? What's the why behind that? It was also really interesting because when I wanted to go to college, back then also girls like me honestly weren't graduating from high school at any great rates, much less not going to college. And my guidance counselor told me when I signed up, she asked me what I was doing in her lobby. And I said, because I want to go to college. And she said, girls like you don't go to college. But by that point, that was my first no. So it was sort of like, okay, no, noise. Next point. So I went in and she followed me into her office. And then she said, what do you want to study? And I said, I want to be an engineer. And I remember her laughing. But, that was just the second no. And I became a rocket scientist and engineer. So, I never went back and put it in her face. But, it's that, how do you get to the yes? And that, helped me so much when I was working in Silicon Valley, being that persistent and resilience to get to that yes. So even giving yourself permission to go past the first no, the second no, to the third no.
And so it's almost having that mental model even before you go into it and being like, if I get a no, that's fine. There's still 2 more chances for me to get that yes. Okay, that's awesome. So then tell me a little bit, what led you to NASA and how was that experience being a rocket scientist?
That was really an amazing experience because some of the most iconic photos we have of Jupiter and its moons, Io and Europa, which is the ones I was working on, are from that mission that I worked on, Voyager 2. And so, it was really the first time we got to see those moons up front and up close, and also, Jupiter. And, back then the technology was so different. I remember they were beaming it and we were all in the cafeteria just oohing and ahhing and then having to analyze all the data. We didn't all have, personal computers back then. So it was a lot of analytical work that I had to do. And, it was just so exciting. I mean, it was just really an exciting moment. Mm-hmm. And then I worked on another mission, which is the Parker Solar Probe. Mm-hmm. And back then, to be able to withstand the heat, the nuclear radiation, solar winds, etc., some of the materials hadn't even been created that could withstand it. Yeah. So it was such a theoretical experience. But I realized that I was so fortunate when I got to work at NASA and JPL. Voyager 2 was passing a planet. Mm-hmm. And then for a long time, you don't have anything to do, or you have things to do, but you don't get the payout, which is like the Christmas going by a planet. Yeah. So at that point, I decided to use my technology skills, which are really heavy in math, and apply them in Silicon Valley. So it was a really good fit.
So then, so transitioning now to Silicon Valley, you've clearly experienced all these different cultures and different leadership styles. So how did you deem like the best leadership style and culture that you want to bring to Girl Scouts, to lead Girl Scouts?
So really good questions, because, some of Silicon Valley is very innovative, hard charging, but it's also not necessarily as inclusive. Mm. And so it was really important after I worked in Silicon Valley that I worked in education, because that helped me make that transition a little bit easier. Yeah. But certainly goal setting, being very focused on first mover advantage, that is incredible. That's ingrained in me, first mover advantage, having worked in Silicon Valley, because you just realize how important that is. Yeah. So some of those skills were really key, and also your analytical skills. So I first started off in technology, but then you move it into business skills in terms of finance. Project management always works out for you, no matter where you are in your career. Yeah. And so, coming to Girl Scouts, the one other thing I did was, post that I was an entrepreneur for a technology company that we had a successful exit, and with that, I could have gone back into technology, but I wanted to use my powers for good, and I started working with, again, my analytical skills on grassroots mobilization to get more kids to do better in school at kind of widespread levels. And that helped me understand how nonprofits, how educators work, because they work one-on-one on one-on-few. And remember, as a systems engineer, you're one on many. Yeah. That's what scale and efficiency is about, right? And so it was a really interesting blend on how do you create opportunities where you can scale, and the educators can do what they do best, which is one on few or one on one. But how do you do that in a way that's economical and efficient? And so that was really good background. Now at Girl Scouts, which is perfect because we scale, right? You have those one-on-one true leader girl experiences, but you're part of an overall network, and it can really scale. Yeah. And so I really appreciate those skills, but it was a good blend of technology and moving and first mover advantage versus, that's so important, because sometimes I think educators and nonprofits don't move as fast. Yeah. And in just the last 3 years in Girl Scouts, we've introduced more than 100 STEM and outdoor badges. That's more than entirety of, our 100-year history. Oh, but incredible. That's the agile style of programming that I learned in Silicon Valley, and that, quick to market.
Yeah, I see. So, there are so many questions I could take this, but just quick questions. So goal setting is obviously it's ingrained in you, and you really believe in it. I just want to know quickly, like, what does goal setting look like to you? Is it something that you write down? Is it something that you put on a vision board? Like, what is goal setting?
Really great. It's funny. I was talking to somebody. I'm like, doesn't everybody have a spreadsheet with their goals and overview and data and calendars?
I'm not sure.
Like, other people don't do that. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I have like, kind of a, 5 to 7 year plan, and then broken down into like that year, what I expect by months. And then every month I have, things broken down. And it's just so ingrained on how I manage my life that I didn't realize that was so unusual. But it helps you really stay focused and making sure that you can accomplish what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's so common to have an Excel sheet with your goals. It should be, but I don't know. So how often do you look at that Excel sheet and remind yourself, okay, this is the plan for next year?
A lot.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. A lot. I update it, especially the daily stuff, to make sure I'm on track.
Yeah.
And, I had a mentor in one of my work jobs in the summer when I was in college at Sandia Labs. And he really taught me, what are the 6 most important things you need to do every day? And he kept me going on that. And so when I worked with him, he'd say, okay, what do you plan to do by the end of the day? And that was so useful for me to understand that. I don't do that every day now, but, I make sure that, I list out what needs to be done so that I make sure that it does get done.
Yeah.
But that was really helpful thinking. And, making sure that you make sure that you have time to restore yourself. You're not always working. You've got to plan for play and fun. Yeah. That's really important as well. Right. I make sure that I put that in, like right now when we're sheltering in place, I make sure that I put in times for Zoom chats with friends and, having times to connect with others and to make sure you have fun. Like on Easter Sunday, our friends all got together with their most outrageous Easter pictures of, the past decade or so. And that was like a lot of fun. Yeah. So you've got to make sure you plan for that as well.
I think that's so true. It is very important that you make time to take care of yourself. And then, so switching gears a little bit. So Girl Scouts, one thing that you've said is you've gotten hundreds, thousands of girls now in the STEM and getting them confident in being able to apply their tech skills and learn coding and whatever it is. So I'm wondering, I want to get your input on just the education system as a whole. Because I think, like, I personally have an opinion in that it's flawed and it hasn't changed in decades. And typically, not even thinking about STEM and not STEM, but when kids are a young age, you're almost put into a bucket saying like, I'm good at math, or I'm not the creative type, so I have to stick with this. And it's like, it lasts for years down the way. So I'm wondering, what do you think about the education system? And if anything, what needs to change to get these girls confident, et cetera?
So there's different parts of that question. So in terms of the overall education system, with the response to COVID and everyone having to shelter at home and doing virtual programming, that sort of really unleashed huge opportunities, but it's also highlighted different styles of learning. Because some kids really just don't do well talking to a computer, and they really get, gain so much from the impersonal conversation. So you get this huge style. And to your point, if you only had one style that was developed in the agrarian, moved to the industrial, where like, we're going to teach you what to do. Right. It's clear that there needs to be a lot of new thinking around how to make that happen. And I think universities in so many ways have really begun adapting different ways to leverage students' creativity and the way they self-pace and learn. So a ton of work there. With girls, it's really interesting, especially with STEM, because one of the things we did at Girl Scouts is we learned that most of the STEM curriculum was developed of what interests a boy. Mm-hmm. And, so if he's interested, then he'll be engaged and he won't disrupt the classroom. But for a girl, she may not be interested in it. Mm. And so we really have redesigned our programs around the concepts of whatever it is we're trying to teach, with coding or buoyancy, center of gravity, protocols for networks, etc., and done it in a lens that first interests the girl. And once she's got interest, then build on her confidence and then the competence. Now, I recognize that if you do a bell curve, I'm on that far end of that bell curve. I like doing rockets at a time when girls like me didn't. So, but I'm like at that tip. The grand majority of girls aren't like that. And it's not being stereotypical, but it's like, what are you interested in? And I'll give you a great example with Legos. For whatever reason in the US, girls typically aren't given Legos when they're 3 years old. Boys typically are. And so boys really have developed a culture of being very familiar with Legos in the US. And yes, there are some girls that do Legos, but by and large, not so much.
Yeah.
So imagine you're a second grade teacher and you want to get boys and girls in a classroom interested in STEM. And you say, I'm going to choose gender neutral Legos. So you do an exercise based on gender neutral Legos. The challenge is the girls notice that they've not really put Legos together before. They're not sure how to do it. The boys are so excited. This is something they've been doing since they were 3 years old, right? And so they quickly gravitate it. The girls go, oh, normally I'm really fast on all my assignments, but I'm kind of not as good as them. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So the teacher then says, I chose a gender neutral topic. Girls don't like STEM, right?
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of success when we have used Legos with girls, but it's in a girl-only environment. She's not looking at the guy, the boys who've been doing it since they were 3 years old, know how to do it. It's kind of like with me with rockets. I failed lots of times, but because I was in a girl-only environment, I kept doing it until I succeeded. And then I got the interest and then the confidence, and then I built on the competence. And so that's what we do is how do we tailor the programs? Like, how do we teach malware and network protocols to 7 and 8-year-old girls? Like, well, you can talk about the 7 network stacks, and the first layer is the physical layer, and the girls would be bored out of their mind.
Yeah.
But what we do is we get girls to sit in a circle, and think about a 7 and 8-year-old girl. Do you want to sit in a circle and talk to your friends?
Always. Yeah.
Always, right? And so then we get a ball of yarn or something they're comfortable with, and they toss the ball of yarn to their friends. And as they toss the ball of yarn to their friends, they're creating a physical network. And then we say one of the girls has malware, and they can see how that network, that malware, that virus got distributed. So in a way that's very familiar to them, they are now interested, and then they actually feel a little confident. I know what malware is. I know what a physical network is, right? And now you can build on the competence.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is so interesting. Also, talking about the Legos, it's almost where I think these girls also associate it as like, okay, Legos, my brother played with that, or, you know,
Right.
they associated with boys. So now it's like you're introducing, no, like anyone could play and learn and gain confidence and competence. So I think that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, and we also know that girls, when they learn something, by and large, want to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And so what we have learned, so for example, in cybersecurity, we've had girls who live in an agricultural area, and they use their cyber skills knowing that tractors and combines no longer have steering wheels. They're all controlled by the Internet of Things. And so they're working on what happens to the sustainability of our food supply when the Internet of Things is hacked.
Yeah.
You know, I love that because they're using their technical skills, but in a way to make the world a better place.
Incredible. Incredible. So clearly, I have a feeling that your rule for 3 no's until a yes, I have a feeling that you like negotiation and you like negotiating with people?
I do. I bought over 100 cars.
Oh my God, there you go.
Not for me, because my friends know I love to buy cars.
Yeah. So
it's like, okay. Oh yes, let me go negotiate. I love that.
And that's also I'm guessing it's not a common thing. Like a lot of people shy away from negotiation because it's a little bit daunting. Like you don't know what they're going to say and things like that. Do you have any negotiation tips just off the bat?
You know, don't be afraid to walk away because that gives you so much leverage. You know, just recently I helped somebody buy a car, and they had a really specific price point. And we found a car, but it was a few $100s off that. And I called the guy and I said, hey, I'm like at a competitor's place. You know, if you want, this is the price you have to meet. He's like, it's impossible. I know there's just no way. I said, that's okay. That's all right. I hang up.
Yeah.
You know, within a few minutes, he's calling back. I think we can make the numbers work. I think we can make. And it's like, yeah, I know. But you have to be able to walk away and feel okay about that. You know, so I think that's really important. The other part that I think in particular for women, I have found, I hate to be gender specific, but I found this more with women, is you have to say, you go in with confidence. The first sale you have to make is to yourself. So you've got to go in going, I earned this. I deserve this. And when you go in with that confidence, that's really helpful.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think that's a great lesson in anything you do. I think you always have to be confident in yourself first before you can be confident to others. So I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know who to come to when I buy my first car.
Yeah, I love doing it.
That's great. So I think more fun questions. I'm really interested to know, what is a passion or hobby that you have other than negotiation, I'm guessing, that you have that's just completely unrelated to your work?
So, I love the great outdoors. So, a couple of years ago, I went to New Zealand and climbed on glaciers. In December, I have to say I was down in Tasmania. So a bit of that outdoor adventure, I really like. I really enjoy that. Not so much that it's, I do say that when I was climbing the glaciers and you were doing the ice picks and stuff, I remember thinking, okay, this is like really challenging. But I really do enjoy the great outdoors and nature quite a bit. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think you're the epitome of just resilience, perseverance, and just like not taking no for an answer and just getting through it. And I love that. I think that's amazing. So as a last question, I'm going to ask you, what is a weird or fun talent that you have that no one else really knows about? And what I've been doing on my episodes, so I'll show you mine. So I can throw blueberries or grapes, but I have blueberries. I can throw them in the air and catch them in my mouth. It is definitely easier when I have a partner, but it's just me, so we'll see how this goes. But here you go. Okay. There you go.
Wow. Okay. I have no such physical talent like that. I have to say, I have an older brother who is an artist.
Okay.
And a writer, and I have a younger brother who was a professional chef and now he's a welder, and so they have like these incredible physical skills. Yeah. And I'm like no, I think in PowerPoint. I wish I had a skill like that. I love walking my dog.
Yeah. Honestly, I think you don't need the physical talent. I swear, I think you have it all in here. That's quite talented. So that's amazing.
Well, I really thank you because, you represent so much hope, and I love that. You've got the eagerness, you've got the curiosity, you've got the determination. Being able to have the resilience is so important. I know many times in my career, I was told no. I worked sometimes 6-7 months to get a job I wanted, but I kept being told no, and I had to figure out how to get that to a yes. So that persistence and resilience really pays off. But you also have the hope and dreams of a better future of how, and I think that's what engineers do so well, especially systems engineers, is the world is coming together because the global supply chain has been disrupted, and we're all coming together in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real hunger to come together in a way that's more oriented towards nature and towards people.
Yeah.
In a way that is much more productive, while we're still being productive.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what we're living in right now, like I think that's more important than ever, just to come together and get through it and work and build these different things where you build community and everything. So I agree. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Sylvia. You've taught me so much, and I'm excited for others to learn from as well. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, you bet. Thank you very much. And I do follow you on YouTube now.
Perfect.
Thank you.